hope for my left leg and my left arm. But we ended up loading up on the bird to go to Germany, and she flew with me to Germany because I was not out of the woods by any stretch. This was going to be a long and arduous recovery process. And I remember getting to Germany. Or no, I'm sorry, before we left, this was 4 days after I talked to my dad. So I called my dad from the sat phone. They had given me, and my dad answered the phone, and I said, "Hey, Pop." And he said, "Why am I talking to you?" I said, "They got me." He said, "What do you mean they got me?" I said, "They got me, Dad, and I'm hurt." He said, "How bad are you hurt?" I said, "They had to take my right foot." There was a pause, and then he said, "Are you going to make it?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "We're waiting for Sergeant Green, and we'll meet you in Germany." And at this point, man, I'm that 4-year-old kid again that just needs his dad. And the last thing I told him was I loved him, but right then I said, "Please hurry." And he said, "You're gonna be all right. I love you. I love you too." And that was the hardest phone call I've ever made in my life, because I just see him at my high school graduation saying, "Why would you do that?" And I'm like, damn it. Damn it. He may have had something there. And I'm still thinking like a young, immature kid. Mm-hmm. But I knew one thing. I wanted my dad.
Hello. Let's see. Well, we're going to work on that. What's up, everybody? It's Moving with Life. It's Andy here. What you just heard, that little bit, about 2 minutes, was this Marine named Jacob Schick, Schick, and he was on what you just heard is a little excerpt from Jocko Podcast number 123, and this is a 4-hour and 17-minute podcast, which is really long, and this is 2 hours into it, and this is where I started hyper focusing, if that's even a word. Focusing it might be even redundant, but leading up to this point of him calling his dad and him realizing, or him realizing now that, at that moment it was like being 4 years old again and wanting your dad. And it really struck a chord because I hadn't seen this episode yet, and Memorial Day just passed, and I made a video about that, which is on YouTube. For you YouTubers, you guys can see that. I have the link below, and I'll have the link in the show notes for the podcast. But it hit me because I've talked about just different things that I've been able to experience with my dad. I've had my dad. He wasn't in the service. I've had other family members that have been in the service. Most of which I wish I could have had a conversation the way I have conversations now. 2 of them served Vietnam that I'll never be able to ask, a question while here on Earth. But, their stories of their experiences. But regardless, stemming on this, and I was actually going to go into With the Old Breed, by E.B. Sledge, which I mentioned his book, but I've never done a book review. I might do the part that I wanted to do next week. But the thing is, I don't want to keep too much time, but I do want to interlude on your day to then, I don't know if I want to say, be more patient, but my thing of moving with life, this entity that's being created, bits at a time, it stopped for this moment, listening to Jacob Schick talk about him. Well, he was in I don't want to say it was a Humvee, but for sure a Hummer, and IED exploded, and it got him. You know, they had to amputate his right foot. Interesting enough is considering, I mean, from his story, which I'll have this podcast, the Jocko Podcast link on the show notes and on YouTube, on the YouTube video as well. But in listening to it, it's amazing how honestly, I mean, even for me, I'm not in the service. I haven't been in the service. You know, I only have these stories that people like Jake talk, like they tell their story. And I have books like With the Old Breed that I read. But given the amplitude of what happened on that day when this IED went off, you know, to lose the right foot, it's like, oh my goodness. And, you know, he's able to talk about it now, and all the struggles he went with drug addiction and then alcohol and even food, and which is a big thing for, I think, what I talk about with people, and especially because of the working out and be like, oh, how to, you know, losing weight, this and that. It's like, well, stop. I mean, eat the right things, and, you know, a lot of things that I've mentioned over and over again. But again, I don't want to tell too far away from him being in his moment, and realizing, you know, he just got blown up. He now is talking to his dad for the first time, which his dad, you'll hear, if you watch this podcast or listen to it, you'll hear, you know, a story of you know, going through high school graduation and telling his dad, and his dad not being too happy. Now he's in this situation where he just got blown up by an IED, and he had to make the call to his dad. And honestly, it's hard to even have an actual expression, because it's like, I mean, I have all my limbs. I go work out, I go swimming, I go lifting, I go even for a walk, sometimes just a walk, and I have that. And when I'm home, then I try to, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I wonder if now it's easier for me to not be embarrassed to still be living at home, because I hear stories like this. People like Jake, E.B. Sledge, I believe, was like 18 or 19 when he, you know, this is during World War II, where he was out and came back, and, you know, I believe E.B. Sledge's dad was a doctor, Jake's dad was a banker. So, you know, having these people, these men surrounded, my dad's a truck driver, even to this day, you know, having these men surround you, and you go through this experience, such as Jake and E.B. Sledge, which then leaves me in a silence. And I'm gonna end with another part of Jake's conversation that he had. But anyhow, sorry, I did lose my train of thought. My point is, let's stick to the point. Let's stick to the premise of using this moment to remember, for us who haven't served or don't have family members that have served, but to take advantage of being, this is what I was going to say, as far as not being embarrassed living at home. It's like, well, no, when I'm home, I mean, as it is, I'm not home a lot. My dad works, my mom still works. You know, they still work. It's not like the house is full of people running around all day long. You know, we're not, you know, it's not like that. That's not how this household runs. And it's not like I'm home all the time. I'm home a lot. I'm home quite a bit, as far as when I'm not on the road, or, you know, if I'm not helping Eddie with whether it's radio tour. You know, last weekend we were in Fort Worth and Round Rock. This weekend we're going to Fredericksburg. But then taking full advantage, which, again, if you watch this pod, and to me it was so profound. I sent my cousin Frank and my cousin Matt, both of which you've seen here at some point. I sent them the links to this podcast, and I texted. I'm like, man, you guys need to watch this. And for you guys that have heard Matt's podcast episodes already, both of them, you know, his dad, and this is a spoiler if you haven't, you need to go check it out. But, you know, his dad was a Marine. He served, and he went through his duty, you know, for this nation, and going through that, and that's its own thing that people experience. But telling back to taking advantage and maybe hitting pause for the day, even for a little bit, for a minute, I don't know, I don't know. I don't want to get too preachy. That's where I stop talking. Is when I feel myself getting too preachy, because I feel like there's enough of that out there, and that's not my place. My place is to help people move, if anything, or at least take a deeper consideration of, okay, this is important or not important, and then act on it, or not worry about it and just leave it be. Again, I was gonna go through with the old breed. I might do it next week. It's funny because I actually upgraded my little what I will now call unofficially my little studio. I got more LED. I got some lamps and I put LEDs in them, so the lighting's way better. Which I'm now starting I'm gonna start putting these short videos. Well, actually, to be fair, I'm gonna put all the podcasts now on YouTube. Really gonna try to key on when I have guests on, but for the time being, just so I can work with it and really try to hone the video part. Having the video as well, the video on YouTube, and then you can find this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes. There was another one, but I can't remember. I had it for a while. I had the app for a while just so I can be able to push that link, but FM something. But now there's a bunch of you can just type in podcasts on Google probably, and it'll give you a bunch of websites that now have podcasting. And I'm gonna leave you with that. As far as me talking, here's a little outro. Or this will be the outro for the podcast. But here's another little excerpt from Jake. Thank you for tuning in for this week. Again, I had one plan, and sometimes like it happens for me. I like, you know what, I'm gonna scrap that. It's not solidified enough for me to say, oh yeah, I should do that. Especially given that past 2 weeks I had a guest, and this week being Memorial Day, it's like I can't make this episode really about me. And Jake, and even Jake, I mean, he'll tell you where how he acted throughout his experience post IED explosion. But even with that, it's still a sacrifice that he made. And for those that know me personally, know how I feel about the military, and making the video for Memorial Day. It's for me, it's beyond words, and I want to leave it at that. Now you guys can listen to Jacob Schick.
This thing called life. I need to keep fighting. And a byproduct of that is that I was a giant dick. But I kept fighting. Mm-hmm. It wasn't pretty. But I kept fighting.
And how long were you in Bethesda for?
So I'm only in Bethesda a few months. And then they moved me. Matter of fact, my dad goes to Walter Reed. And then he comes back and he says, yo, Jake, this is your deal. And let me back up a bit. My dad and my brother are both pretty squeamish, like when it comes to blood and stuff like that. They just don't do well with it. My dad, who was an executive banker, just retired last year, an executive banker, started as a window teller at a bank. He worked his way up. Did not leave my bedside for 62 days. Didn't leave my side. No matter how hard I was on him, or it did not leave my side. And I like to say that had it not been for this explosion, I would not be nearly as close to my... I don't think I could possibly be closer to my dad as I am now. Or my brother. Same thing. Mm-hmm. Same relationship that before we just didn't have it. And I think it was because there was always that alpha struggle. Whereas it had to take one of the alphas having a thumb war with the Grim Reaper for everyone to say, what the hell are we doing? And why are we doing it? I mean, that's why just one of the reasons I wouldn't trade it. Because that's beautiful, man. And I got to experience something that a lot of people don't get to experience. That they die wondering, did I say everything I needed to say? Did I love as hard as I needed to love? I don't have to wonder about that now, and neither do they. Love and be loved. Everything else is filler.